The text arrived at 11:47 p.m. while I sat in my basement workshop, nursing a lukewarm beer and pretending to organize my tools. Mrs. Wilkes from next door had always been nosy, but tonight her nosiness would change everything. Saw your wife get dropped off by a different man than last week. Hope your insurance is paid up. I stared at the message, my fingers tightening around the phone. Lydia had been on another one of her girls' trips to Portland, supposedly bonding with her coworkers from the corporate office where she worked in HR. These trips had become more frequent over the past 3 months, always coinciding with her growing coldness toward me. My name is Evan Mercer, and I'm a home inspector, the kind of guy who crawls through basements and attics, checking for problems other people prefer to ignore. 34 years old, practical to a fault, with a sarcastic streak that my wife used to find charming, used to. The front door slammed upstairs, followed by the click of heels on hardwood. Lydia was home early from her weekend getaway. I climbed the creaking stairs, each step echoing in our old Victorian house like a countdown. She stood in the kitchen, still in her travel clothes, fumbling with her purse. The smell of hotel soap clung to her, not the cheap stuff from budget motels, but the expensive kind from upscale places. "How was Portland?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Fine." She didn't look at me, too busy arranging items on the counter with unnecessary precision. The usual team-building nonsense. "Which hotel did you stay at this time?" Her hands paused for just a moment. "The Eastland Park." "Why?" I'd driven past the Eastland Park 2 weeks ago during a job. It was under renovation, wrapped in scaffolding with signs announcing its closure until spring. But I didn't mention that. Not yet. Just curious. You seem to stay at different places every trip. Lydia finally turned to face me, her expression shifting into that familiar mask of irritation she wore whenever I asked questions she didn't want to answer. At 31, she was still striking, auburn hair always perfectly styled, green eyes that could cut glass when she wanted them to, and the kind of professional wardrobe that commanded respect in corporate boardrooms. "Is there a point to this interrogation, Evan?" "No interrogation, just making conversation with my wife." She sighed dramatically, the sound echoing off our kitchen's high ceilings. "Look, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking about us, about our marriage." Here it comes, I thought. The conversation I'd been dreading, but somehow expecting. I crossed my arms and waited. "I need variety, Evan. Brady gives me what you can't." Brady. The name hit me like a slap, even though I'd never heard it before. But the way she said it, casual, matter of fact, as if she were discussing the weather, that was what really stung. "How generous of him," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Should we send a thank you basket?" Her eyes flashed. "Don't be sarcastic. This is serious." "Oh, I can see that. Brady must be quite the philanthropist, giving away what I apparently can't provide. Does he run a charity? Husbands without variety?" "You're being ridiculous." "I'm being ridiculous? You just announced you're cheating on me with someone named Brady, and I'm the one being ridiculous?" Lydia's composure cracked slightly. "I didn't say I was cheating." "No, you just said Brady gives you what I can't. I assume you're not talking about his superior home inspection skills." She grabbed her purse and headed toward the stairs. "I can't talk to you when you're like this." "Like what? Like a husband who just found out his wife is stepping out with Brady the benefactor." "I'm going to bed. We'll discuss this when you can be mature about it." She stormed upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the lingering scent of hotel soap and the weight of her confession. But in her hurry to escape, she'd left something behind. Her phone sitting on the counter next to her keys. I stared at it for a long moment. Lydia was religious about her phone, never leaving it unattended. The temptation was overwhelming, but I'd never been the type to snoop. Trust had always been important to me, even when it wasn't reciprocated. But tonight felt different. Tonight, trust was already broken. The phone wasn't locked. She'd always been careless about security, claiming she had nothing to hide. The irony wasn't lost on me as I scrolled through her messages. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Brady Ellison. The name appeared in dozens of text threads, dating back 4 months. I opened the most recent conversation, and my stomach dropped. Brady. "Can't wait for next weekend. The suite at the Harbor View has that amazing view you love." Lydia. "Evan's getting suspicious. Maybe we should cool it for a while." Brady. "Why? You said he's clueless. Besides, Janelle thinks I'm at the gym." Janelle. Brady was married too. I scrolled further, finding photos that made my jaw clench. Not explicit, but intimate enough to leave no doubt about their relationship. Voice messages revealed planning sessions for their meetings, discussions about cover stories, and worst of all, conversations about me. Brady. Does he suspect anything? Lydia. Please. Evan's too busy crawling around in basements to notice what's happening in his own house. He's predictable, safe, boring. Brady. And I'm not. Lydia. You're everything he's not. Confident, exciting. You take risks. I set the phone down, my hands trembling slightly. Not from anger, not yet, but from the strange clarity that was washing over me. For months, I'd blamed myself for the distance in our marriage, wondering what I'd done wrong, how I could fix things. Now I knew the truth. There was nothing to fix because I wasn't the problem, but Brady Ellison was about to become one. I picked up the phone again and found Brady's contact information. His profile showed a gym selfie, all muscles and smug grin, the kind of guy who probably used phrases like crushing it, unironically. More importantly, it showed his full name and, through a quick social media search, his address, and his wife's name, Janelle Ellison. I opened a new message thread and typed carefully, making sure it would send from Lydia's phone. You deserve to know what your husband has been doing. Meet me at Murphy's Diner tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. A friend. I sent the message to Janelle, then deleted the thread from Lydia's phone. Let her wonder how her lover's wife found out. Let them both wonder. Upstairs, I could hear water running in our bathroom. Lydia was taking one of her long showers, probably washing away the evidence of her weekend with Brady. I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by the familiar sounds of our old house settling for the night, and began to plan. My wife wanted variety. Brady gave her what I couldn't, time to show them both what they had been missing. Murphy's Diner sat on the edge of town like a relic from a simpler time, all chrome and red vinyl, with coffee that could strip paint and waitresses who called everyone Han. I arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a corner booth where I could watch the door. Janelle Ellison walked in at exactly 2 p.m. I'd expected someone like Lydia. Polished, professional, the kind of woman who married a gym rat like Brady. Instead, Janelle was quietly attractive in a way that suggested substance over style. Mid-30s, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, with intelligent brown eyes that scanned the diner before settling on me. She slid into the booth across from me without introduction. You must be Evan. And you must be wondering how I know about your husband and my wife. The waitress appeared with coffee neither of us had ordered. Small-town diners operated on their own logic. If you sat down, you got coffee. We waited until she moved away before continuing. I've suspected for months, Janelle said, wrapping her hands around the mug. Brady's been going to the gym a lot lately, but he never smells like sweat when he comes home. He smells like perfume. Lydia's been taking weekend trips to Portland. Team-building exercises, she called them. Brady's been having weekend emergencies at work. Sudden projects that require his immediate attention. We sat in silence for a moment, two people who'd been made fools of by the same lie. But there was something in Janelle's expression that suggested she wasn't just another victim. The question is, she continued, what do we do about it? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots I'd taken from Lydia's messages. Janelle's jaw tightened as she read, but she didn't seem surprised. I have some evidence too, she said, producing her own phone. Bank statements showing charges at hotels I've never been to. Credit card receipts from restaurants where he's supposedly taking clients. And this. She showed me a photo of Brady's gym bag, unzipped to reveal a bottle of expensive cologne and a change of clothes that looked more suitable for a date than a workout. We could confront them, I said. Demand explanations, threaten divorce. We could, but that's what they're expecting. Hurt spouses making emotional scenes, giving them excuses to paint us as the problem. I leaned back, studying her face. What are you suggesting? Janelle smiled for the first time since she'd arrived, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. I'm suggesting we give them what they want. Variety. Just not the kind they're expecting. Before I could ask what she meant, my phone buzzed with a text from Doug, my oldest friend and the only person who knew about my suspicions regarding Lydia. How'd the meeting go? Please tell me you're not planning to forgive and forget. I showed the message to Janelle. Doug's been my friend since high school. Ex-cop, divorced, thinks I should have seen this coming months ago. Smart man. What does he do now? Private security, corporate stuff mostly. Why? Because if we're going to do this right, we'll need help. And I have an idea that requires someone with his skills. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. There's an office party next weekend. Brady's company is throwing their annual gala at the Harborview Hotel, the same place where he's been taking your wife. Lydia will probably be there as his guest, assuming they're ready to go public. And we're going to crash it, together. I felt a slow smile spreading across my face. You want to show up as each other's dates. I want to show up as the couple everyone wishes they could be. Charming, attractive, obviously happy together. Let them explain to their coworkers why their affair partners' spouses are having such a wonderful time. It was diabolical. It was also brilliant. There's more, Janelle continued. Brady's been bragging to his colleagues about his new relationship. Apparently, he's been painting you as some kind of loser who doesn't appreciate what he has. Has he now? Oh, yes. According to my source in his department, Brady's been telling anyone who'll listen that he's doing your wife a favor by showing her what she's been missing. The coffee in my mouth suddenly tasted bitter. Your source? Brady's assistant, Monica. She's been feeding me information for weeks. Turns out she has a thing for married men who cheat on their wives. She's been hoping Brady would notice her, but he's too busy with Lydia. So she's willing to help us? She's willing to help me ruin him. The fact that it also ruins your wife is just a bonus. I pulled out my phone and texted Doug. Change of plans. We're going to need formal wear and your best behavior. I'll explain tonight. His response was immediate. This sounds like trouble. I'm in. Janelle and I spent the next hour planning. She had connections at the hotel through her job. She worked in event planning, which explained her strategic thinking. I had Doug's investigative skills and my own knowledge of the building trades, which would come in handy for the more physical aspects of our revenge. By the time we left the diner, we had a plan that would humiliate Brady and Lydia in front of their colleagues, expose their affair to their professional circles, and leave them explaining their behavior to people whose opinions mattered to their careers. One more thing, Janelle said as we walked to our cars. After next weekend, we're even. This isn't the beginning of a relationship between us. It's the end of our relationships with them. Understood. This is business. Exactly. Very personal business. That evening, I sat in my basement workshop with Doug, explaining the situation over beers and the remains of a pizza. Doug listened without interruption, his cop instincts cataloging every detail. Let me get this straight, he said when I finished. Your wife is cheating with a married coworker, you've teamed up with the guy's wife, and you want to publicly humiliate them at their office party. That's the basic plan, yes. And you don't want to just divorce her and move on with your life because... I considered the question. Why wasn't I just filing papers and walking away? It would be cleaner, simpler, less risky. Because she thinks I'm predictable, safe, boring. She thinks I'll just roll over and take it. Doug nodded slowly. And you want to prove her wrong. I want to prove that underestimating people is dangerous, especially people who spend their days looking for problems other people try to hide. Fair enough. What do you need from me? Background check on Brady Ellison. Financial records if you can get them legally. And I need you to be my wingman at this party. What kind of wingman? The kind who can charm a room full of corporate types while I dance with another man's wife and watch my own wife's world fall apart. Doug raised his beer in a mock toast. To variety. To consequences. We clinked bottles, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Anticipation. For too long, I'd been reacting to Lydia's behavior, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, how I could fix our marriage. Now I was taking action, setting the terms, controlling the narrative. My phone buzzed with a text from Janelle. Confirmed. They'll both be at the gala. Brady's been telling people he's bringing someone special. Time to show them what special really looks like. I typed back. Looking forward to it. This is going to be educational for everyone involved. Upstairs, I could hear Lydia moving around in our bedroom, probably getting ready for another evening out with the girls. She'd been doing that a lot lately, sudden dinner plans, impromptu drinks, always with vague explanations and defensive responses when I asked questions. But I wasn't asking questions anymore. I was providing answers. The week leading up to the gala passed with agonizing slowness. Lydia continued her charade of normalcy, chatting about work over breakfast and asking about my day with the kind of forced interest that made my teeth ache. She was good at pretending. I had to give her that. If I hadn't seen the evidence on her phone, I might have convinced myself I was imagining things. Doug's background check on Brady revealed exactly what I'd expected. A middle manager with delusions of grandeur, leveraged up to his eyeballs on a lifestyle he couldn't afford, the gym membership, the expensive car, the trendy apartment, all financed with credit cards and loans that were stretching his budget to the breaking point. Guy's living paycheck to paycheck, Doug reported over lunch at our usual spot. The fancy restaurants he's been taking your wife to, he's putting those on credit cards that are already maxed out. So he's not just a cheater, he's a financially irresponsible cheater. Gets better. I talked to a buddy who works security at his office building. Brady's been bragging about his new relationship, but he's also been asking around about job openings at other companies. Word is, his current position isn't as secure as he pretends. I filed that information away for future use. A man with financial problems and job insecurity was a man with vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Janelle had been busy with her own preparations. She'd arranged for us to have a table at the gala, not as crashers, but as legitimate guests. Her event planning connections had gotten us invitations through a client who couldn't attend. "We'll be seated at table 12, she texted me. "Perfect view of the dance floor and close enough to the head table that everyone will see us." I'd rented a tuxedo for the occasion, not the cheap kind from the chain stores, but a proper one from the formal wear shop downtown. If we were going to make an impression, it needed to be the right one. The night before the gala, Lydia announced she wouldn't be home until late. "Work dinner," she explained, not meeting my eyes. "Team meeting about the Henderson project." "On a Friday night?" "You know how it is. Sometimes these things run long." I did know how it was. I also knew the Henderson project had been completed 2 months ago, because she'd complained about it constantly during that time. After she left, I drove to the Harbor View Hotel to scout the location. The gala was being held in the main ballroom, with cocktails in the adjoining lounge. I walked through both spaces, noting the layout, the sightlines, the acoustics. Old habits from my home inspection work, always good to know the territory. The hotel bar was busy with the usual Friday night crowd. I ordered a beer and positioned myself where I could watch the elevator bank. At 8:47 p.m., Brady Ellison stepped out of the elevator with my wife on his arm. Seeing them together in person was different from looking at photos. They moved like a couple, his hand on her lower back, her leaning into him as they walked. The easy intimacy of people who'd moved beyond the awkward early stages of an affair. Brady was exactly what I'd expected from his photos. Tall, gym-built, with the kind of aggressive confidence that some women found attractive. He wore an expensive suit that probably cost more than I made in a week, and he carried himself like a man who'd never been told no. Lydia looked radiant in a way I hadn't seen in months. Her dress was new, black, elegant, the kind of thing she used to wear when we went out together. She was laughing at something Brady had said, her face animated with genuine happiness. I felt a stab of something that wasn't quite jealousy, more like recognition. This was the woman I'd married, the one who'd disappeared gradually over the past year. She wasn't gone, she'd just been saving herself for someone else. They took a table in the far corner of the bar, away from the crowd but visible to anyone who cared to look. Brady ordered champagne, expensive champagne based on the bottle the server brought. They toasted to something I couldn't hear, but the way they looked at each other made the meaning clear. I finished my beer and left before they could notice me. Tomorrow would be soon enough for confrontations. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made everything feel sharper, more focused. I picked up Janelle at her apartment, and she took my breath away. She'd traded her casual clothes for a stunning blue dress that complemented her dark hair perfectly. She looked elegant, sophisticated, and most importantly, happy. "You clean up nicely," she said, adjusting my bow tie with the familiarity of a longtime partner. "You look incredible. Brady's going to regret every choice he's made in the last 6 months." That's the idea. The drive to the hotel was comfortable, filled with the kind of easy conversation that comes naturally to people who understand each other. We weren't pretending to be a couple, we were becoming one, at least for tonight. The Harbor View's ballroom was transformed into something from a magazine spread. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over round tables draped in white linen, and a string quartet played softly near the dance floor. The guest list was clearly upscale, men in expensive suits, women in designer dresses, the kind of crowd that Brady wanted to impress. We checked in at the registration table, where a young woman with a clipboard confirmed our seating assignment. As she handed us our name tags, I noticed her doing a double take at our names. "Excuse me," she said, "but are you Evan Mercer?" "Yes." "I think your wife is already here. She's seated at table 6 with the Ellison party." Janelle and I exchanged glances. "Actually," I said, "this is my date for the evening. Perhaps there's been some confusion." The woman looked flustered, clearly unsure how to handle the situation. Let me check with my supervisor." "No need," Janelle said smoothly. "We're happy with our table assignment. Thank you." We walked away, leaving the registration woman staring after us with obvious confusion. Word would spread quickly in a crowd this size. By the time we reached our table, half the room would know that Evan Mercer had arrived with a woman who wasn't his wife. Table 12 was perfectly positioned, just as Janelle had promised. We could see the entire room, including table 6, where Brady sat with his back to us. Lydia was facing our direction, but she was deep in conversation with the couple next to her and hadn't noticed us yet. "How long do you think it'll take?" I asked, settling into my chair. "For them to notice us? 5 minutes, maybe less. For the gossip to reach them? 3 minutes after that." She was right. Within moments of our arrival, I could see heads turning. whispered conversations starting, glances in our direction. The corporate world thrived on drama, and we just provided enough to fuel speculation for months. The first person to approach our table was a middle-aged woman in a silver dress who introduced herself as Monica, Brady's assistant and Janelle's inside source. "You two look wonderful together," she said, her eyes bright with anticipation. "This is going to be so much fun to watch." "Has Brady noticed us yet?" Janelle asked. "Not yet, but Lydia has. She's been staring at your table for the past 2 minutes. She looks confused." I turned slightly and caught sight of my wife's face. Confused was an understatement. She looked like someone had just told her the laws of physics had been repealed. "Showtime," I murmured to Janelle. She stood and offered me her hand. "Shall we dance?" The string quartet had been replaced by a small band playing something slow and romantic. We moved on to the dance floor just as the song began, and I was surprised by how natural it felt to hold her, to move with her, to pretend we'd been doing this for years. "You're a good dancer," she said. "You sound surprised." Brady has 2 left feet. I'd forgotten what it was like to dance with someone who actually knows how. Over her shoulder, I could see our table. Table 6, where Brady had finally turned around and spotted us. His face went through several expressions in quick succession: confusion, recognition, and finally anger. Lydia was saying something to him, her gestures animated, her expression increasingly frantic. Other people at their table were looking back and forth between them and us, clearly sensing drama but not understanding its source. "I think we've gotten their attention," I said. "Good. Now comes the fun part." As the song ended, we were approached by another couple, the Hendersons, who introduced themselves as friends of Brady's. They were clearly fishing for information about our relationship, and Janelle handled their questions with masterful ambiguity. "Evan and I have been getting to know each other recently," she said. "It's amazing how much you can have in common with someone when you really take the time to talk." "How did you two meet?" Mrs. Henderson asked. "Through mutual friends," I replied, "people who thought we'd be perfect for each other." It was technically true, even if the mutual friends were our cheating spouses. More people approached throughout the evening, colleagues of Brady's who were curious about the mysterious woman who'd arrived with Lydia's husband, and friends of Lydia's who were trying to figure out what was happening. Each conversation was a small masterpiece of misdirection, leaving our questioners with more questions than answers. The highlight came during dinner, when the band announced a special dance for the evening's most charming couple. They asked for nominations from the crowd, and to my amazement, several hands went up pointing in our direction. "Ladies and gentlemen," the bandleader announced, "please join me in congratulating this evening's most charming couple." The spotlight found us at our table, and the room erupted in applause. I looked across the room to table 6, where Brady was staring at us with unconcealed fury, and Lydia looked like she was about to be sick. We made our way to the dance floor for our victory dance, and I couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. 6 hours ago, I'd been a boring home inspector whose wife was cheating on him. Now I was half of the evening's most charming couple, dancing with a woman who made me feel like I could conquer the world. "How does it feel to be charming?" Janelle asked as we swayed to the music. "Like something I should have tried years ago." The dance ended to thunderous applause, and we returned to our table to find a bottle of champagne waiting, compliments of the hotel management for the evening's winning couple. I raised my glass in a toast, making sure my voice was loud enough to carry to the surrounding tables. "To variety," I said, "and to finding exactly what you need when you least expect it." Janelle clinked her glass against mine, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "To getting what you deserve." Across the room, I saw Lydia stand abruptly and head for the exit. Brady followed a moment later, his face dark with anger. They were leaving early, just as we'd planned. But our evening was just beginning. The Monday morning after the gala arrived with the kind of crisp autumn clarity that made everything seem possible. I was in my kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, when Lydia finally came downstairs. She'd spent Sunday locked in our bedroom, claiming a headache, but I knew better. She'd been processing what had happened at the party, trying to figure out how to handle a situation she'd never anticipated. She poured herself coffee with shaking hands, her back to me as she spoke. "We need to talk. Good morning to you, too." "Don't." She turned around, and I was startled by how haggard she looked. Dark circles under her eyes, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. "Don't pretend this is normal. Don't pretend Saturday night didn't happen." I folded the newspaper and gave her my full attention. "What would you like to discuss?" "You know exactly what I want to discuss. What were you doing at that party with Brady's wife?" "Dancing, mostly. We won an award for it, if you recall." Her coffee mug hit the counter with enough force to slosh liquid over the rim. This isn't a joke, Evan. Do you have any idea what you've done? I went to a party with a lovely woman and had a wonderful evening. I thought you'd approve. You're always telling me I should get out more. That lovely woman is married to the man I'm seeing. Ah, so we're calling it seeing now? How refreshingly honest of you. Lydia's face flushed red. How did you even meet her? Through mutual friends, people who thought we'd have a lot in common. What people? What friends? I stood up and moved to the sink, rinsing my coffee mug with deliberate slowness. You know, it's interesting. For months, you've been telling me I need to be more social, more outgoing, more willing to try new things. Now that I'm taking your advice, you seem upset about it. You're doing this to hurt me. I'm doing this because I enjoy Janelle's company. She's intelligent, funny, and she appreciates things about me that apparently went unnoticed in this house. The use of Janelle's name hit Lydia like a physical blow. She'd been hoping, I realized, that Saturday night was some kind of misunderstanding, a coincidence that could be explained away. The fact that I knew Brady's wife by name made it clear this was intentional. How long have you known? She asked quietly. Known what? About Brady and me. I turned around, leaning against the sink, and studied her face. She looked smaller somehow, and diminished by the weight of her secret being exposed. I've suspected for months that you were having an affair. I confirmed it was with Brady about 2 weeks ago. I met Janelle shortly after that. How? Does it matter? The point is, you wanted variety in your life, and now you have it. So do I. Lydia sank into one of our kitchen chairs, her head in her hands. This is a disaster. Do you know what people are saying at work? I imagine they're saying quite a lot. Office parties tend to generate gossip. They're saying I'm a cheater, that I was having an affair with Brady while you were dating his wife. Well, 3 out of 4 of those things are true. Not bad accuracy for office gossip. She looked up at me with something approaching desperation. We can fix this. We can tell people it was all a misunderstanding, that you and Janelle are just friends. Why would I want to do that? Because I'm your wife. Are you? Because for the past 4 months, you've been acting more like Brady's girlfriend. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and final. Lydia started to cry. Not the manipulative tears she'd used in past arguments, but genuine sobs that shook her entire body. I made a mistake, she whispered. I got caught up in something that felt exciting, but it doesn't mean anything. Brady doesn't mean anything. He meant enough for you to spend weekends with him. He meant enough for you to lie to me repeatedly. He meant enough for you to tell him I was boring and predictable. Her head snapped up. You read my messages. I did. Very educational. I particularly enjoyed the part where you discussed how clueless I was, how I was too busy with work to notice what was happening in my own house. I didn't mean those things. Yes, you did. And you know what? You were right. I was clueless. I was so focused on trying to be a good husband that I missed the fact that I was married to someone who didn't want a good husband. She wanted excitement, variety, someone who would take risks. I pushed away from the sink and walked toward the kitchen door. Well, congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted. Where are you going? To work. Some of us still have jobs to do. Evan, wait. We need to figure out how to handle this. I paused in the doorway. There's nothing to figure out. You made your choice months ago. I'm just making mine now. The rest of the week passed in a strange kind of suspended animation. Lydia tried several times to restart our conversation, but I deflected each attempt with the same calm politeness I'd show a client. She wanted to discuss our marriage, our future, how we could repair what had been broken. I wanted to discuss whose turn it was to take out the trash. Meanwhile, my relationship with Janelle continued to evolve in ways neither of us had expected. What had started as a strategic alliance was becoming something more complicated. We met for coffee twice that week, ostensibly to plan our next move, but the conversations drifted into personal territory, our childhoods, our dreams, our disappointments. I married Brady because he seemed confident, she told me over lunch on Thursday. I was 26 and tired of dating men who couldn't make decisions. Brady always knew what he wanted. What you wanted didn't matter. I thought it would eventually. I thought if I supported his ambitions, helped him build the life he wanted, he'd eventually ask what I wanted too. But he never did. No. And somewhere along the way, I stopped asking myself what I wanted. Until I met you, the admission hung between us like a bridge neither of us was quite ready to cross. We were still technically married to other people, still officially focused on revenge rather than romance. But the connection was undeniable. On Friday, Doug called with news that changed everything. You need to hear this, he said without preamble. Brady's in financial trouble. Serious trouble. How serious? The kind where he's been borrowing money from the wrong people. My contact at his bank says he's 3 months behind on his car payment, 2 months behind on rent, and his credit cards are maxed out. So he's broke. Worse than broke. He's desperate. And desperate men do stupid things. What kind of stupid things? The kind where they blame other people for their problems. Word is, he's been telling anyone who'll listen that you and Janelle set him up at that party, that you're trying to ruin his life. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October weather. Is he threatening us? Not directly, but he's been asking questions about your schedule, where you work, what kind of car you drive. That's not curiosity, Evan. That's reconnaissance. What do you think he's planning? Nothing good? You need to be careful, and you need to warn Janelle. I called her immediately, and we agreed to meet that evening to discuss the situation. But as I hung up the phone, I realized that Doug's warning had crystallized something I'd been trying to ignore. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. Somewhere between the gala and now, I'd started caring about Janelle in a way that had nothing to do with our mutual desire to hurt our cheating spouses. And if Brady was planning something stupid, she could be in danger. That changed everything. The text message arrived at 2:17 a.m. on Saturday morning, waking me from the first decent sleep I'd had all week. The number was blocked, but the message was crystal clear. Stay away from my wife, or you'll regret it. I sat up in bed, instantly alert. Beside me, Lydia stirred, but didn't wake. She'd been sleeping poorly since the gala, tossing and turning with what I assumed was guilt and anxiety about her situation. Now I wondered if she knew more about Brady's state of mind than she'd let on. I slipped out of bed and went downstairs to call Janelle. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. Evan, what's wrong? Did you get any messages tonight? Texts, calls, anything like that? No. Why? I read her Brady's message. There was a long pause before she responded. He's losing it, she said finally. He came by the apartment yesterday afternoon, demanding to know how I met you, what we'd discussed, whether I was planning to divorce him. What did you tell him? The truth, that I knew about his affair, that I'd met you through mutual circumstances, and that what I did with my personal life was none of his business anymore. How did he take that? Not well. He started yelling about how you'd manipulated me, how this was all some elaborate scheme to destroy his career. Then he started throwing things. My grip tightened on the phone. Did he hurt you? No, but he scared me. This isn't the man I married, Evan. The Brady I knew was arrogant and selfish, but he wasn't violent. This person is different, desperate. We talked for another 20 minutes, and I convinced her to stay with her sister for the weekend. If Brady was escalating to threats, I didn't want her alone in an apartment where he had keys. Sunday morning brought another message, this one longer and more specific. You think you're clever, don't you? Taking my wife to that party, making me look like a fool in front of my colleagues. You have no idea what you've started. Back off now, or I'll make sure you lose everything that matters to you. I forwarded the message to Doug, who called me within minutes. This guy's coming unhinged, he said. You need to document everything, save all the messages, keep a record of any contact. If this escalates to stalking or harassment, you'll need evidence. What about going to the police now? With what? Anonymous threats that don't specify any particular crime? They'll take a report, but there's not much they can do until he actually does something. So we wait for him to do something? We prepare for him to do something. Ace, how's your home security? I looked around my kitchen, taking inventory. Standard locks, no alarm system. It's not exactly Fort Knox. Change that. Today. Get a security system installed, change your locks, and consider staying somewhere else for a few days. But I wasn't ready to run. This was my house, my life, and I wasn't going to let Brady Ellison chase me away from either. Instead, I called Janelle and suggested we meet for dinner, somewhere public, visible, where Brady could see us if he was watching. If he wanted to escalate things, I'd rather control the time and place. We chose a restaurant downtown, one with large windows facing the street and plenty of foot traffic. I arrived early and chose a table where we'd be clearly visible from outside, then settled in to wait. Janelle arrived precisely on time, looking beautiful but tense. She'd traded her usual casual clothes for a dress that suggested this was a special occasion, and I realized we were both playing roles now, the happy couple, unbothered by threats from unstable ex-partners. Any more messages? She asked as she sat down. 3 more since this morning, each one a little more specific about what he's going to do to ruin my life. Such as? Calling my clients to tell them I'm unreliable, contacting the licensing board to file complaints about my work, spreading rumors about my personal life. She winced. He's going after your livelihood. Trying to, but 2 can play that game. I pulled out my phone and showed her the research I'd been doing. Brady's company has a strict ethics policy about workplace relationships, specifically relationships between employees that could create conflicts of interest or hostile work environments. Lydia doesn't work for his company. No, but she works for a company that does business with his company, and according to their employee handbook, which is publicly available online, relationships that could compromise professional judgment are supposed to be disclosed to HR. Janelle's eyes widened. He never disclosed the affair. Neither did she, which means they've both been violating their company's ethics policies for months. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that if Brady wants to play dirty, we should show him what dirty actually looks like. We spent the next hour planning our counterattack. Janelle had documentation of Brady's financial problems, including credit card statements and loan applications she'd found while gathering evidence of his affair. I had screenshots of his threats and Lydia's text messages discussing their relationship. Between the two of us, we had enough evidence to destroy both their careers and their reputations. Are you sure you want to do this? Janelle asked as we prepared to leave. Once we start this process, there's no going back. He started it when he threatened me. I'm just going to finish it. As we walked to our cars, I noticed a familiar vehicle parked across the street, Brady's expensive sedan, with a figure behind the wheel. He'd been watching us, just as I'd hoped. I walked Janelle to her car, making sure to stay in the light where Brady could see us clearly. The street lamp cast a hard, unflattering glow over the sidewalk, the kind that erased shadows and left nothing to hide behind. I knew exactly where he would be parked. I didn't need to look for him to feel his presence, tight, watchful, territorial. That was the point. I kept my pace relaxed, unhurried, as if this were the most ordinary moment in the world. As she unlocked her door, I leaned down and kissed her cheek, a gesture that could be interpreted as friendly or romantic, depending on your perspective. It was deliberate without being excessive, close enough to be unmistakable, innocent enough to deny. "Drive carefully," I said, loud enough to carry across the street. "You too. Call me when you get home." I didn't rush away. I stood there for a second longer than necessary, hands in my pockets, posture loose, making it clear I had nothing to hide and nothing to fear. Only after her taillights disappeared at the end of the block did I turn toward my own car. I waited until she'd driven away before walking to my own car, taking my time, making it clear I wasn't intimidated by Brady's surveillance. I checked my mirrors slowly, adjusted my seat, buckled in. No sudden movements, no nervous glances. As I pulled out of the parking space, I saw his headlights come on behind me. He didn't close the distance. He didn't flash his lights. He stayed back just far enough to pretend coincidence. Amateur mistake. I let him follow. He followed me for 6 blocks before turning off, apparently satisfied that I was going home alone. 6 blocks of restraint, of simmering rage barely contained. 6 blocks of him confirming what he needed to believe, that I was still within reach, still predictable. But his message was clear. He was watching, waiting for an opportunity to make good on his threats. When I got home, Lydia was waiting in the living room with a bottle of wine and what looked like a prepared speech. The lights were dimmed, candles lit, the couch arranged like a stage. She sat upright, shoulders back, expression soft but rehearsed. The wine bottle was already open. She'd planned this. "We need to talk," she said. "So you mentioned this morning." "Really talk. About us. About what's happening. About how we can fix this." I sat down across from her, noting the careful way she'd arranged herself on the couch. Legs curled under her, wine glass in hand, the picture of vulnerable femininity. Every detail was intentional. Every signal designed to disarm. "What did Brady tell you about tonight?" I asked. Her carefully composed expression faltered. "Just for a fraction of a second. Enough." "What do you mean?" "He followed me to dinner. He's been sending me threatening messages. I assume he's been in contact with you about his plans to destroy my life." "He's upset. You have to understand, his career is everything to him. When you showed up at that party with Janelle, it humiliated him in front of his colleagues." "Good. Evan, please. He's not thinking clearly right now. He's talking about doing things that could hurt both of us." The way she said both told me everything. "What kind of things?" She hesitated, and I could see her calculating how much to reveal, measuring risk, choosing language. "He wants me to leave you, to move in with him, make our relationship official. And I told him I needed time to think about it." I almost laughed. The sound caught in my throat, sharp and disbelieving. "You need time to think about whether to leave your husband for the man you've been cheating with for 4 months? It's complicated." "No, it's not. You want to have your cake and eat it too. You want to keep Brady for excitement and variety, and keep me for stability and security. But that's not how this works anymore. I stood up, the decision already made, the conversation suddenly feeling small and unnecessary. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow, I'm filing complaints with both your companies about undisclosed relationships that violate ethics policies. I'm also filing a police report about Brady's threats. After that, you can move in with him, stay here alone, or go wherever you want. But this marriage is over. You can't do that. It'll ruin both our careers. Then you should have thought of that before you decided you needed variety. I headed for the stairs, leaving her sitting alone with her wine and her regrets. The silence behind me felt heavier than any argument. As I reached the landing, my phone buzzed with another message from Brady. Last warning. End this now, or I'll end it for you. I forwarded the message to Doug and Janelle, then turned off my phone. Tomorrow, Brady Ellison would learn what happened when you threatened the wrong person. But tonight, I was going to get the first good night's sleep I'd had in months. Monday morning arrived with the kind of cold rain that made everything look gray and unforgiving. I was in my office by 7 a.m., preparing the documentation that would end Brady and Lydia's careers while protecting myself from whatever retaliation they might attempt. Doug arrived with coffee and the grim satisfaction of a man who'd spent his career dealing with bullies. Security systems being installed at your house this afternoon, he reported. I've also arranged for some friends to keep an eye on your place for the next few days. Friends? The kind who don't like it when people threaten other people, don't ask for details. I didn't. Doug's network of former cops and security professionals operated by their own rules, and those rules generally favored the innocent over the guilty. My first call was to Lydia's company, where I spoke with the HR director about their ethics policy regarding undisclosed relationships. I explained the situation in clinical terms, providing dates, documentation, and evidence of the ongoing affair. This is quite serious, the HR director said after reviewing the materials I'd emailed. We'll need to conduct a full investigation. I understand. I'm not looking to cause trouble for anyone unnecessarily, but I thought the company should be aware of the situation. My second call was to Brady's company, where I had a similar conversation with their compliance officer. Both companies took the allegations seriously. Corporate America had no tolerance for ethics violations that could lead to lawsuits or bad publicity. By noon, both Brady and Lydia had been suspended pending investigation. Lydia called me at 12:47 p.m., her voice shaking with rage and panic. What have you done? I reported ethics violations to the appropriate authorities. Standard procedure when employees fail to disclose conflicts of interest. You've destroyed my career. You destroyed your career when you decided to sleep with a business contact and lie about it for 4 months. I just documented the destruction. They're talking about termination. Do you understand what that means? I'll never work in HR again. Then you should have thought of that before you told Brady I was too boring to notice what was happening in my own house. The line went quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, more desperate. Brady's lost his mind. He's been calling me all morning, screaming about how you've ruined everything. He's talking about making you pay for this. Let him talk. You don't understand. He's not just angry, he's desperate. He owes money to people who don't accept late payments. Without his job, he can't pay them back. Still not my problem. He has a gun, Evan. That stopped me cold. What? He bought it last week. He's been carrying it around, talking about how he's not going to let anyone push him around anymore. I felt ice forming in my stomach. Are you telling me he's planning to shoot me? I don't know what he's planning, but he's not rational anymore. He blames you for everything that's gone wrong in his life. After I hung up, I called Doug and Janelle, warning them both about Brady's mental state and possible weapons. Doug's response was immediate and professional. We're moving you to a safe location until this gets resolved. I'm not running from this guy. You're not running. You're being strategic. There's a difference. But before we could make arrangements, my phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Evan Mercer? The voice was unfamiliar, professional. Yes. This is Detective Morrison with the city police. We need to talk to you about Brady Ellison. What about him? He's been in an accident. Can you come down to the station? An hour later, I sat in a sterile interview room across from Detective Morrison, a tired-looking woman in her 40s who'd clearly seen too much of human nature's darker side. Mr. Ellison wrapped his car around a tree about 2 hours ago, she explained. He was driving erratically, well over the speed limit. Witnesses say he seemed agitated, possibly impaired. Is he? He's alive. Banged up pretty badly, but he'll recover. What's interesting is what we found in his car. She slid a photograph across the table. It showed the interior of Brady's sedan, with papers scattered across the passenger seat. I could make out printouts of my home address, my work schedule, and what looked like surveillance photos of my house. Can you explain why Mr. Ellison might have been collecting information about you? I told her everything, the affair, the threats, the escalating harassment. Detective Morrison listened without comment, taking notes and occasionally asking for clarification. We also found this, she said, producing another photograph. This one showed a handgun on the car's floor. He was coming after me. That's what it looks like. The good news is he won't be coming after anyone for a while. He's facing charges for reckless driving, weapons violations, and stalking. The bad news is this kind of obsession doesn't usually end with a car accident. Meaning? Meaning you should be careful. Even from a hospital bed, desperate people can cause problems. I left the police station with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. Brady's obsession with destroying me had ultimately destroyed him instead. The accident had been his own fault, the result of driving recklessly while consumed with rage and desperation. Janelle was waiting for me in the parking lot, her face pale with worry. I heard about the accident on the radio, she said. Are you all right? I'm fine. Brady's the one who isn't. We drove to a coffee shop where we could talk privately, and I filled her in on the details. She listened with the kind of focused attention that had drawn me to her from the beginning. So it's over, she said when I finished. The immediate threat, yes, but there are still consequences to deal with. Such as? Your marriage. Mine. The fact that we've both blown up our lives in the name of revenge. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee cup. Do you regret it? Which part? Any of it. All of it. I considered the question seriously. A week ago, I'd been a boring home inspector married to a woman who was cheating on me with her coworker. Now I was a man who'd systematically destroyed 2 careers, ended 2 marriages, and driven his wife's lover to a mental breakdown. No, I said finally. I don't regret it. Even though it means starting over, new life, new relationships, new everything. Especially because it means starting over. She smiled for the first time since I'd known her. Not the calculating smile of a woman planning revenge, but the genuine smile of someone who'd found something worth smiling about. So what happens now? She asked. Now we figure out what we want our lives to look like without Brady and Lydia in them. Together? If you want to, I want to. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their previous lives. Outside, the rain had stopped, and late afternoon sunlight was breaking through the clouds. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, I tensed, expecting another threat or crisis. Instead, it was from Doug. Heard about Brady's accident. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Beer tonight to celebrate. I showed the message to Janelle, who laughed. The first genuine laughter I'd heard from her. Not the polite kind people use to smooth over discomfort. Not the brittle kind that hides tension. It caught her by surprise, escaped before she could filter it, and for a moment it changed the entire tone of the afternoon. She shook her head slightly, like she couldn't believe the audacity of it all. Your friend has a point, she said, still smiling. This does call for a celebration. What are we celebrating? She tilted her head, considering the question more seriously than it deserved. A variety. The real kind. The word lingered between us, heavier than it sounded. Not chaos, not impulse, not damage disguised as freedom. Something intentional, something chosen with open eyes. I raised my coffee cup in a mock toast. To variety. To getting exactly what we deserved. There was no bitterness in her voice, just balance. As we left the coffee shop, the late afternoon sun caught the windows just right, reflecting the street back at itself. I realized then that Detective Morrison had been wrong about one thing. Brady's obsession with destroying me hadn't destroyed him. It had freed both of us. He'd lost his job, his marriage, his freedom, and possibly his sanity. But those were consequences of his own choices, not weapons I'd aimed at him. I'd lost a cheating wife and gained a woman who understood me. Not because she filled a gap, but because she saw the whole picture and didn't flinch. Lydia had lost a stable marriage and gained an unemployed, unstable lover with legal problems. Brady had lost everything and gained nothing. Sometimes the universe has a sense of justice, after all. That evening, as I sat in my kitchen waiting for the security company to finish installing my new alarm system, the house felt unfamiliar in a good way. The clicking of tools and low murmurs from the technicians echoed through rooms that had finally stopped holding tension. I got a call from Lydia. She was crying. Deep, wrenching sobs that made her almost incomprehensible. He's in the hospital, she managed between sobs. They say he might go to prison. I heard. This is all your fault. if you hadn't interfered, none of this would have happened. Her accusation felt automatic, like a script she'd rehearsed for the moment reality cornered her. If I hadn't interfered, you'd still be cheating on me, and Brady would still be cheating on his wife. The only difference is, now everyone knows about it. There was silence on the line, then a sharp inhale. I loved him. No, you didn't. You loved the excitement, the secrecy, the feeling of getting away with something. You loved the idea of Brady more than you loved Brady himself. And what about us? What about our marriage? I looked around the kitchen, where we'd shared thousands of meals, had countless conversations, built what I'd thought was a life together. The counters, the table, the familiar marks and scratches. It all felt preserved now, like a museum, a collection of artifacts from someone else's life. Our marriage ended the day you decided you needed variety. Everything since then has just been paperwork. So that's it? You're just going to throw away 8 years? I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that. After I hung up, I poured myself a drink and sat on my back porch, listening to the sounds of my neighborhood settling in for the night. Doors closing, a distant laugh, a car passing slowly. Somewhere out there, Brady Ellison was lying in a hospital bed, facing criminal charges and financial ruin. Somewhere else, Lydia was probably calling her friends, trying to find someone who would listen to her version of events and tell her she was the victim in all this. But I wasn't thinking about either of them. I was thinking about Janelle, about the conversation we'd had that afternoon, about the calm clarity in her eyes, about the possibility of building something real with someone who understood both the cost of betrayal and the value of honesty. My phone buzzed with a text from her. Dinner tomorrow? I know a place with great variety. I typed back, Perfect. I'm ready for something completely different. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to tomorrow. The variety my wife had wanted was nothing compared to the variety I'd found. And unlike her version, mine came without lies, without betrayal, and without regret. It came with possibility instead.